Welcome to the Mojo Market Report. Here's your hosts, Dave Sturchio and Chris Gueci.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Mojo Market Report on a very special report right here, courtesy of Mojo. We have ourselves a very special guest with all the stuff that's been going on with Mojo, whether it be in the NFL coming to a close and the NBA just launching. We had to get the best of the best. We had to get a guy that's a little bit, just a tad familiar with the betting game over there, Doug Kezirian. Doug, man, welcome to the show, and how you doing out there?
It's good to be with you guys. It's been really fun to track from afar on the other side of the country, basically in Las Vegas. But a lot of cool stuff. I enjoyed the different twists to the betting space this product offers. But good, obviously in terms of like how I'm doing, just getting my life back. I was in Arizona for 6 days, pretty busy with the whole football season. So now in a sort of Monday through Friday regular flow, if you will.
Yeah, getting right back into it.
So obviously, Doug, we know you're an avid sports bettor, and I heard you're a baseball card enthusiast as well. You want to take us through where your love of the sports card game and betting in general developed?
Yeah, no, I was definitely into cards a lot more up and through like college. So basically, it all kind of was decided for me, if you will. I'm the youngest of 5 brothers. So by the time I was born, there were certain things that were just going to happen. So I had a bunch of baseball cards. My parents were very conscientious of not doing one thing for one and not the other. So, there was like everyone gets a set of Topps baseball, a full, full catalog or full crate or whatever we called them. So I had sets every year, and then I naturally became a huge sports fan. Definitely the most or the biggest sports fan of all my brothers. And then just, the running joke is I never watched cartoons growing up because I never had control of the remote. Right. So it was always someone bigger than I was, and we were watching sports and things like that. And that was during the Magic, the Showtime era of the Lakers growing up in LA. And so really just fell in love with sports, always wanted to go right to the sports page of the LA Times, look at the box scores and all the stats. And then back then, like sports pages would have point spreads and things like that. So I got into that my own, although I did have a $5 bet in 3rd grade on the Super Bowl with my brother.
Which Super Bowl was it?
So I can't believe it's 3rd or 5th grade. So it was the year after the Bears killed the Patriots.
Okay,
so that was the Giants Broncos, was
right?
It?
So I had the Broncos plus the 7, and it was so funny because I watched one brother
7 in 3rd grade. Go figure.
So I watched one brother tease the other brother on. He had the Bears, and he was teasing the other one, laughing at him because they killed him, and he won $5. And I was so envious, really, of just like the taunting and like the game within the game that the point spread offers. So I waited my entire year until the next Super Bowl so I could bet on the game. Little did I know that at the time you could bet on other sporting events, but I just thought it was the Super Bowl you bet on. So I waited patiently for an entire year, and then I took the Broncos plus 7. And I had like a soccer game because like soccer is a winter sport in LA and California. So I remember I had a game in the morning and then like got to the car and I wanted to turn on the game. And it was the first quarter, and like the Broncos, I think, were up or had blown their lead. I forget what happened, but by the time I got home, I was not good. And then
I tell you, that's so funny. It's a year's worth of research went into that one bet, which is great.
Well, I'm just like, hey, I'm going to get you Super Bowl, waiting patiently. Meanwhile, there's thousands of other sporting events I could be betting on, not knowing the situation.
Are you excited? Are you excited about the reemergence of these cards? I mean, Chris is an avid collector. All of a sudden, he's got a little bit of a side business going on here. All of a sudden, cards are back on the rise again.
Right. So I'm a big, but like, especially in the professional world, like I'm a big believer in like an inch wide and a mile deep. So I don't even play poker recreationally out here because I just trust those specialists. And there's just so much. So with the card industry and stuff, I was like, I don't know if I can open that can of worms just because I knew I wasn't qualified to be a expert, so to speak. And that's why I've sort of stayed my lane. But I remember in 7th grade, we would have like baseball card shows or like, sort of things on the weekend where we would bring our albums and we would trade cards and things like that. And even like later in high school in 10th grade, people like I had a buddy who kind of came up with the idea of Mojo. I was like, well, what if you could like bet on this and buy stocks instead of just
we was talking
Beckett monthly or whatever.
It lends perfectly to each other. If you're into the sports card arena at all as an adult, it's a perfect transition into the Mojo market, I think.
So what did you actually think about that? I mean, when Mojo finally does release, I guess it was September, a couple weeks into the NFL season, what was your first knee-jerk reaction to a sports stock market?
Yeah, no, I liked it because there was immediate returns, right? I'm still waiting for my Kevin Moss and Ramon Martinez baseball card rookies to skyrocket, and so I could retire on an island. Those didn't happen, even though Kevin Moss was the stud first baseman of the Yanks. I like how it's a direct result. I actually really like that it's production based, right? So because there's a lot of those rookie cards were such an arbitrary element to value, right? I mean, yes, the Canseco rookie and Griffey were the gold standards for a while, but there's blemishes with the Billy Ripken and all that. But it wasn't a direct result to production, and now it is. And I think I like that component the most. And you're essentially, it's like glorified day trading,
right?
But day trading also can happen within games, and I do live betting and stuff like that. But I just like that it's production based, and you can really and then you can short and take a stand on things as well.
So you were making picks every week with Mojo. We were actually following along with you throughout the course of the season. Tell us how you thought about which players were under or overvalued. Did any of your other sports betting knowledge kind of play a factor into this, considering it's a whole new ball game?
Yeah, it absolutely did, because it was essentially, there was sort of a long-term and a short-term, right? The long-term were sort of the younger guys, even going to get some of the quarterbacks that could be drafted or that will be drafted this year.
Right.
And then the short-term were some of the veterans. And like Matt Ryan was a guy I was ready to fade. And then, of course, he got demoted. Now he was starting again once they did the head coaching change to Saturday. But I was pretty confident with a lot of my picks, some of the stuff. And some of it was like the long game. I want to say Trevor Lawrence or someone like that I was playing the long game with. And that's, what a bold, hot take there.
Yeah.
But I was able to read the tea leaves and was able to project that something is unsustainable or something is sustainable and there's value. And I think that the easiest way or the simplest way was comparing it to other players at that same price range. And then just to compare the two in and of itself.
Yeah, it's almost like it was unfair. Who we've tracked a lot throughout the course of the year, obviously right before the concussions and stuff, but Tua was somebody that we kept our eye on the entire season. I'm like, why is he so undervalued and underpriced right now? Like, this is somebody that you should be, shooting for the moon. And unfortunately,
and look, maybe they knew something that we didn't over there.
I don't know.
It's because he hasn't played. He's still in concussion protocol.
I think he's out now, finally. But that was one guy that we were taking a look on, and then the Trevor train, obviously, not your boldest take, but the one that's going to pay off dividends towards the end of his entire journey.
We've talked NFL for so long.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Mojo just launched the NBA yesterday.
Thank
I think
God.
we should play a little game. Enough of the chatter. If you had $100K to invest in a fantasy realm, in your dream portfolio, we'll call it, in the NBA players, where would you go?
So that's a good question, because you also have to assess your own appetite for profit, right? Are you going to go with the riskier guys, or are you going to go with some blue chips, if you will? The guy I remember tweeting about a video, a couple of months ago, said if you guys were in the NBA, this would be my first purchase, and it was Anthony Simons. I think he's the closest thing to Steph there is, but he also has competed in a slam dunk contest. So I think he's such an electric player, and he's a guy who can obviously get on a heater. Now, the unfortunate thing is this week is he suffered a grade 2 ankle sprain, and he's out 3 to 6 weeks. So some guys, I believe Justice Winslow suffered it in December, and he's still not back. And so that's concerning. I would hope the price would go down a little bit, but obviously this is for long-term purchase. is a multi-time All-Star. I actually think he is. He's so young. And again, he can really do anything on the court given his athletic ability. And then he's a perimeter player. So he's a guy I really like. He's in the 140 range. Like Maxi's 144. I like Maxi a lot, but I would say I probably prefer Simon's upside more just because of his, he can get on a heater. But Fred VanVleet is in the same area, and I think the ceiling is higher for Simons, even though I believe VanVleet has made an All-Star game. I think I would actually consider shorting Morant.
Really?
I love him. I mean,
I love John Morant. That's one of my
guys. Like everything that's right with the league, right? Kind of like Westbrook, right? Like he plays so hard every possession, every game. And, we complain about load management. We have to value the guys who don't just mailing in ever. But I think the ceiling is a little lower than we think with Morant, just because A, the position is so loaded, but B, it's so shooting dominant. And I think, Barkley said this when Jason Kidd won a title in his 40s with the Mavs when they beat LeBron in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And he says you can play that long into your career when you play below the rim. But when you start to play above the rim and your agility and athleticism is your calling card, the shelf life's a little shorter. And I think like Iverson is that happened with him.
D Wade almost comes to mind.
Right. And then other guys turn into post moves, right? We saw Jordan at the end of his career and things like that. So I just wonder if Morant is sort of headed down an AI path where it could be like a steep nosedive. And the team is structured just sort of like the regular season. We'll see. Obviously, they had injuries last year, and the Warriors-Grizzlies was not the series we deserved as fans, the full strength. True. I'm just saying at 250. Like, obviously, if he was lower, I'd be like, but he's in the range of, he's in that range of 250, whereas I think I'd rather have like SGA or Halliburton, because I think Halliburton's a guy who can play into his 40s at 225. So, again, we're splitting hairs. It's hard because Morant, his brand, his Q rating, if you will, is off the charts. And, Wally Zerbiak didn't even know who Halliburton was before he made the All-Star game, right? So we're assessing
I remember
stats.
That was interesting.
And things like that. We're assessing stats. I think I would probably take Halliburton, especially with essentially a set shot and a guy who plays on the perimeter and is not Mr. contortionist in the air every possession, and so awesome. But I think the shelf life is longer for a guy like Halliburton.
I love it. Any vets that you're kind of like looking into right now? Because I mean, obviously, John Morant's one of the new future faces of the league, and then all the guys that you mentioned are on the rise. Like when you look at obviously LeBron is the benchmark. He's the top dog of the Mojo Market basketball as they just released their career bets. But is there any veterans that you're looking at? Like, you know what? I think he's got a little bit more left in the tank where, as maybe the Mojo Market predicts that maybe he'll only play another year or two, but you see another 4. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's tough. I got to think about it. I actually was genuinely surprised earlier this year. I did not realize Taj Gibson was still in the NBA. And then I was like, whoa, is that the same? Because it's like Gibson. The announcer said, I was like, wait, that guy, it looks like Taj Gibson. That can't be Taj Gibson still.
Right.
I was like, I thought Tibbs ran him into the ground in Chicago.
I'm a Knicks guy, and I'm sitting here. I'm like, man, Gibson was such a gamer. Like,
yeah.
I love seeing that guy play, and every ounce of effort he would throw on the court every week.
I wonder if Tibbs takes that personally. He's like, hey, I put Deng in the hospital. I should have been able to put Gibson. He's like, that's my bad. I should have been able to run Gibson to the ground.
He's doing a service to Derrick Rose. He's just stealing money at this point. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Listen, man, we know you're banged up. Just have a seat. We'll just hang on to you for a little bit. So look, you're one of the preeminent voices in the world of sports betting. And I know, again, me and Chris have followed you through and through. Are you starting to see any trends or anything in the betting world that you're excited about? Anything that might worry you right now, especially when it comes to Mojo?
I'm not at a worry point at all. I think there is a saturation point that we're going to hit at some point. I think there's specialty programs like this, like other programs, even Daily Wager, which I work on a lot. Like that's pretty standard. We're going to have more of those shows, which is awesome, that bettors are watching or people at least remotely interested in betting. I think the question is for the leagues and for mostly the networks is to find that sweet spot where viewers of regular programming, like let's just say SportsCenter or a live broadcast of a game, where what's the betting sort of slice of the pie? How big of a slice of the pie to just deliver something that they want, but doesn't push people away and it's more inclusive. Like we'll see it last night on the TNT broadcast. It was, early on the first quarter, coming out of commercial break, like Kenny and Barkley picked their, a prop from FanDuel. And we've done it on some NBA games. Jalen Rose picks which team's going to score next. And I think that's totally fine. Can you go farther? Can you go further on that? And I know we have a rules analyst, a former referee of each sport. Are we going to have a betting guy come in and just be like, hey, this is what's going on? Not like this is my play, but like, hey, the market has moved on this. I found this interesting, and sort of just disseminate the information and translate it, if you will, from betting terms into sports terms. So a person who's not a diehard watching the betting specific shows like yours and others can just process it, because I think betting is it's another analytic. It's just another way to have a conversation about sports. And I think there obviously is an appetite, because we know the numbers of all these sports books, and Mojo, you guys do it too, launching basketball as well. But I think you don't want to do it too much. I believe that the NFL had a limit on how many sportsbook ads could be in the Super Bowl broadcast, which makes sense. So it's a learning process. It's a figuring out process. But I'm curious as to where it goes and where that sweet spot of the Venn diagram is, where they don't go too far. Again, in the non-betting programming, but the betting programming is like the sky's the limit. I mean, we've done some betcasts, and it's really fun in that regard. But the question is, where is that going to go? So I'm more just curious, not concerned. I mean, look, everyone has their own appetite. I wished in a perfect world, though, obviously it's headed down the path of like the European model, where it's considered, vice is too strong of a word, but just something that it's recreational and entertainment, and you're paying for it. I wish it went down the lane of sort of the stock market. And I think you guys can do that more than any. But I wish we looked at it that way, rather than just like, hey, same game parlay, let's turn in 50 cents into 5 million with these 100 parlays, 100 leg parlay. I think that's awesome. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to just stop that, but I wish there was at least a conversation or a tone that was set where it was around commodities, because professional bettors I know out here, I mean, one guy used to work at the Merc in Chicago, and we really look at it like commodities and things along those lines. Now, I'm much more of a sports guru and fan and handicapper, sort of the eye test, but I do understand the concept of commodities in a portfolio. And I put together portfolios, if you will, on futures, like an MVP race or just a championship futures or the draft, things along those lines. But I also, live bet, and that's where you're putting together sort of day trading and portfolios and middles and things along those lines.
Yeah. It's so funny. You were mentioning like how much could you get into the language? I mean, I remember watching Al Michaels call a Sunday Night Football game, and him just like alluding to it, but not really alluding to it. Like that helped a couple people out there, you're like with the last field goal, and you're like, come on, man, just say it. You had them +3. Like, I get it. You know what I mean? But it's funny. It's interesting to see where they go with that. I wouldn't mind, like, when you're looking at a starting lineup in on the NBA, on TNT or whatever, ESPN, where next to their starting lineup, you have like their share price or something, something that far deep. I mean, it could. I mean, look, we've seen things grow and like just like vines. You know what I mean? Like it grows and grows and grows. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that. Yeah.
So we got your take on the industry approach, but I think we the people want to know the expert take on what's your overall approach to betting in general. Is it? I know you mentioned the situational thing, but is it you just play the situational things, or do you pick your spots throughout? Is it a weekly thing where you handicap the games all week for the NFL? I'm curious. I think that people would love to hear about that.
Yeah, I think it's extremely nuanced. And if you only have one set of way of doing things, then you're in trouble. So I always joke that I'm an aggregator of just information, right? So I listen to as much as I can, whether it be experts on non-betting shows like, I don't know, NFL Live or ESPN, whatever, and then betting specific content on various radio shows, podcasts, things along those lines. And it's just sort of something where if you have sort of a gut instinct, like, hey, that feels right, like that makes sense, or yeah, that's a difference maker in terms of something that can affect an outcome, right? If you're like, oh, this defense really struggles against the three, whatever it is, right? Then it's like, okay, but like the coach may know that, and he's going to adjust his game plan this week for an NFL game. I'm big in situational handicapping. Just the other day, I faded Northwestern coming off the big win over Purdue. Now, they won. I was dead wrong. They were up 20-something, right? But those are the type of things, and I'm going to bet against them in the next game, trust me. But those are the types of things that I look for. Is it foolproof? Of course not. But I do think if the math guys are shaping the numbers and they're betting from a projection computer model standpoint, then the edge and the opportunity has to be outside of that. And it has to be situational or revenge spots or things like that. But again, it can't just be one thing. It has to be sort of all encompassing. And also with the NBA, you have to make immediate decisions with guys certain being out, right? Yeah. So yesterday we had the Bucks Bulls game, and DeRozan was out. Middleton was out. Connaughton was out, and Caruso was out. So I bet the over. And I figured DeRozan, he's their leading scorer. But no, he slows the game down. And I watched them the previous night, and they're like fluid. And Caruso is one of their best defenders. So if Kobe White's going to be starting, and there are numbers to back this up, but it's hard because those numbers are taken when a guy like Kobe White plays 20 minutes, and if he's going to be playing 35, you can't just, almost 1.5 it. Like, it just doesn't work that way. And then especially with Kobe White, let's say he's the main go-to guy with the second unit. Well, now he's playing alongside Zach LaVine. He has to defer. So it's not that simple as just taking their regular production and multiply it by whatever more minutes they're playing. So you have to kind of think. And then with Connaughton being out and then Middleton, there's a more free-flowing things with Javon Carter and stuff like that. So you kind of have to just get a feel. So then, near the end of the first quarter, Giannis goes down. He's out. So I'm live betting the under like no other because they're stagnant and the game plan has completely changed. So whatever they talked about in timeouts, like Giannis is a machine for the overs because he gets other team into foul trouble and he gets his teammates in bonus, right? So Jrue Holiday is more likely to drive if they know they're in the bonus. So he's either going to get an easier bucket because the defender is going to back away, or he's going to go to the free throw line. So things along those lines, when Giannis goes down, obviously he's a stud defender, but he actually helps the over because he's unstoppable force in transition, but he also gets teams in the bonus and opponents like that. So you have to stay nimble and be able to pivot for in-game betting, but everything's situational. The Wizards just played the Blazers in Portland. And I know a sharp guy who hammered the Wizards because they had played 2 weeks ago and the Wizards blew like a 20-something lead in the second half and Portland came all the way back and won. And he was like, Wizards want this. So I was like, well, maybe you should bet it first quarter, first half, right? Because you can get sort of angles. And now it happened that was the game Simons got hurt, I believe, and just, Portland was unable to come back. But Jeremy Grant was also out. Things along those lines. Like a Jeremy Grant's not going to move the line, but like that matters if he's their best defender for Porzingis or whatever it is in a certain matchup, or Kuzma. So I think those are important things. And if you know the sport, you can really sort of get an angle along those lines. So it's a long-winded answer, but that's really what it takes. It's all encompassing and extremely nuanced.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Giannis before. We were talking about him this morning, and I was like, or yesterday when we were trying to place a bet on one of the liquid props with Mojo, I was like, well, I mean, he's averaging 40 against Chicago. He's played him twice, like he's doing amazing. Right. And then all of a sudden, my liquid prop just dips. I was like, well, he's that's that. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
all right, you're right. You're controlling Mojo right now. Okay, there's the NFL, there's the NBA. MLB is launching very soon with baseball coming back. So now you're the creator, you're the guy in control. What is the next sport Mojo should add to the sports stock market, in your opinion?
So I was thinking about that. I think golf would probably be the next step.
I like that.
Because it's such an individual sport, right? It lends itself, and you can play the long game, and then obviously top whatever 20, 30 finishes can help your stock price. And I think the people who are into golf are also probably into the concept of Mojo.
There it is. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where you want to do it. And it's straight individual. You're betting on an individual. Now, Live could have disrupted things, or maybe you just create a different sort of metric.
Better.
Yeah.
You could argue, hey, it's just more.
Right. But I think that's the next step. And I mean, I would say NASCAR after that, but I don't know if
just going to say that. I figured individual performances.
I was thinking about like MMA, but I think it's too promoter based for you to really have that. Guys get too politically driven, where guys don't get opportunities. So I don't agree there with myself.
But I like it. I like it because if you lose, it's not the end of the world, as opposed to boxing and stuff like that.
That's true.
Yeah. But I think it's so short lived because some guys might be on 3-fight contracts.
Exactly.
Or you would only be able to do the big one or whatever. There's a way to tweak it. Like I know some guys in fantasy leagues who don't draft kickers; they just draft the team kicker. So if I have the Giants kicker or whoever it is, because if a guy gets hurt, then you get who's ever kicking that. So you could do like the current heavyweight, things like that.
Not bad,
but I think that might get too complicated. I do like the concept of it because it's okay if you lose, but the contract lengths can be so short.
Right. We'll put it in the suggestion box. You never know. Maybe we can pull this off, man. So, hey, listen, Doug, we really appreciate you taking the time to join the Mojo Market Report. A lot of insight here, a lot of information that I'm definitely going to digest and rewatch and really help myself with my stocks and my portfolio on Mojo. We really appreciate it, man. We hope you got, you continue success out there and enjoy Vegas. As I just look over to my window right now, it is absolutely brutal out here in New Jersey. So it's pouring out. So I'm sure you're enjoying it out there. And again, thank you so much for your time, man.
Oh man, it was awesome. Thanks. It was fun to chop it up and discuss it all. And I know you guys do a great job and are all over it. So it's fun to chat for a while. And I appreciate you having me on.
All right, man.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Doug. Thank you.